In Kenya's parliament yesterday, that's Thursday evening, over a ruling by the Speaker aimed at breaking a deadlock over which coalition has the majority members of parliament in the House. The course of the debate was the placement of 14 MPs whose parties were originally in the opposition Azimio la Umoja, which means Quest for Unity coalition, who have since shifted allegiance across the aisle. Opposition lawmakers were angered when the Speaker, Moses Wetangula, ruled that the Kenya Kwanza coalition has the majority in the House with 179 MPs, while the opposition has 157 MPs.
Now, opposition MPs argued that the constitutional timeline allowing for decamping from coalitions had not yet been reached. At the peak of the argument, one opposition MP tried to grab the mace, a symbol of parliamentary authority, to express displeasure at the ruling. That was quite a scene yesterday, I must say, being taking the mace of the parliament.
It was a lot of drama, and this is not the first time it's happening in Kenya. I don't know if Kenyan parliamentarians are more passionate than other
well, let's
African
be fair to Kenya. We also saw something like that in Nigeria also.
Yes,
remember
Obioma
Magigi grabbing the mace and all that debacle.
Yeah, but the frequency at which it happens in Kenya is just, I guess our guests will tell us more about this when we get into the conversation.
Definitely. And straight into it, let's bring in our guests to tell us more about the situation. We have Arnold Maliba, is a public policy analyst. We also have Richard Bosire, is a political analyst. A gentleman, welcome to the conversation. You're both joining in from Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, I think we have before we start this conversation, let's take this natural clip of what exactly happened at the parliament.
The ruling was that.
Okay, Richard, if you can hear us, we're looking at what happened when the Speaker of the House of Parliament, Moses Wetangula, said that Kenya Kwanza had the majority of MPs in the House. Were you surprised?
No, I was not surprised because, when you're the Speaker, you're supposed to be neutral for all sides. But, Moses Wetangula he won that seat because of the Kenya Kwanza coalition. He was part of the Kenya Kwanza coalition that campaigned for William Ruto. So he was expected to rule in favor of William Ruto. You remember, just a day before the ruling, President William Ruto made a surprise visit to the National Assembly, and he had lunch with Moses Wetangula, the Speaker, and the Speaker of the Senate, Amason Kingi. So I'm sure when they had lunch, after the lunch, they had an agreement that Moses Wetangula must rule in favor of Kenya Kwanza after 14 MPs defected and joined the William Ruto side. So, but the Azimio side has said they'll go to court and take legal action because on paper they have the numbers, but in reality the numbers are not there. Kenya Kwanza is leading; is the majority in parliament right now.
Now, Richard, we saw the MPs engage in fisticuffs, and the live feed from Parliament had to be cut off because these scenes were quite disgraceful. Members that they refer to as honourable engaging in a boxing and shouting, shoving themselves. What was the bone of contention and the reason for the chaos that erupted yesterday? What really sparked it?
Those were disturbing scenes from the National Assembly. Remember, they are just newly elected MPs who are supposed to have moral integrity. They're supposed to behave like honorable members of parliament. But these are not new things in the Kenyan political scene. I remember in 2007, it was very chaotic. Even in 1992, it was very chaotic. The incidents are just keep on repeating themselves. And we're expecting more of this because the opposition side also has numbers. At the moment, the opposition has won on paper 171 and Kenya Kwanza 165, but 14 joined Kenya Kwanza. So the opposition still has numbers, and William Ruto will still need the opposition to pass crucial constitutional bills. So I think we'll now engage on a charm offensive to try and woo some of the opposition MPs to join Kenya Kwanza in terms of controlling parliament. It needs like a quarter of the opposition MPs to be able to have a smooth control of parliament.
Okay, Richard, it's quite surprising because you're saying we're going to have more of this debacle going on in Parliament. Now, still going deeper in the course of this chaos, just like you rightly said, it was a placement of 14 MPs who originally belonged to Azimio la Umoja. Now, Azimio MPs argued that the constitutional timeline allowing for the campaign had not yet reached, hence making the 14 MPs members of Azimio coalition as per the law. Now, what is the position of the law on this within the timeline for moving to another party and the rest?
The constitution is very clear, and the Election Act, that once you're in a coalition, you cannot leave until 2 months are over. So when we had our election in August 8, 3 months. So the MPs can leave, a party can leave a coalition by November 9th. So the parties which had an agreement with the Azimio coalition now in the opposition, they have until November 9th to officially leave the coalition and join Kenya Kwanza. So by November 9th, they'll be legally in Kenya Kwanza coalition.
Yeah, but Moses Wetangula he had to be smuggled out of Parliament, and the live broadcast of this event discontinued. This November 9th date, does it mean that, Moses Wetangula already made his declaration. He didn't wait for November 9th. Now, as the Azimio camp released any statements in the aftermath of this event, and does it mean that those principal officers of Parliament, the chief whip, the minority whip, and all other principal officers, will they stay the same? And is it over?
After the ruling by the Speaker, the Azimio coalition officially takes the position of a minority. So those who are nominated by the Azimio coalition to be the majority leader, chief whip majority leader, they automatically assume the role of minority leaders. And the Kenya Kwanza officially takes over the majority seats. So nothing will change even after November 9th. About the court case that Azimio is moving to court to challenge the ruling by the Speaker, I don't think much will happen, because they say that the National Assembly is independent from other organs of government. So it's a wait and see, but I don't think the court case will change anything. The status quo will remain.
All right, now, a day before this meeting, I believe we heard reports of William Ruto visiting the parliamentarians. Now, why is there so much grouse or importance for Kenya Kwanza to have a majority in parliament?
Sorry, I have a problem with my audio. I didn't get you.
Okay, we're looking at Kenya Kwanza having the majority in parliament. Why is it so important to them?
Is it a problem?
Can you hear me, Richard?
Yes.
We're looking at the importance of Kenya Kwanza coalition having the majority in parliament. Why is it so important for them?
It's important to have a majority in parliament, because when the government wants to change some laws, when they want to pass crucial bills, for example, when they want to add taxes or reduce taxes, they must depend on the National Assembly to pass those laws. If you don't control parliament, you'll have difficult time in passing laws, and which will be able to assist your government. So, like the former regime former President Uhuru Kenyatta managed to get a majority in parliament because he did a handshake with Raila Odinga. And Ruto has said clearly that he would do a handshake with Raila Odinga. So it means he must approach the opposition MPs individually. And I think that's what he must be doing from now henceforth, so that he can control parliament. I'm sure a majority of the opposition MPs will be invited to State House to cut deals so that they can support government in parliament.
So in other words, this will favor the President, William Ruto, now, if Kenya Kwanza has a majority.
Sorry?
I said, will this favor William Ruto? Will Kenya Kwanza have a majority in parliament?
Yeah. It will be a big positive to the Kenya Kwanza coalition and William Ruto if he gets majority in parliament. So he must engage the opposition MPs by giving them not money, but favoring them in politically. For example, we saw him visiting Raila Odinga's stronghold in Homa Bay last weekend. He has started with the opposition MPs. So this weekend, we also expect him to visit opposition stronghold. So that's what he is planning to do, so that he can woo the opposition MPs. And I'm sure the next by January next year, some of the opposition MPs will be supporting government in parliament, so that William Ruto will have an easy time in parliament. Without that, he'll have a hard time in parliament.
Partisan policies for his government. Now, Richard, your country, Kenya, is famous for producing long-distance runners, middle-distance runners, but they have no prowess in boxing. But looking at the events that happened yesterday, these are men and women that are referred to as honorable, but looking at them engage in fisticuffs and fighting, it's not a good look for Africa and the international community. Are there any penalties in Parliament to punish MPs that fight and disrupt proceedings like what we saw yesterday? Would there be any penalties? Because if you don't punish them, they'll go back and fight at the next sitting.
There's a laugh there, Richard.
I mean,
Richard already told us that we're expecting more of this.
Look at what is happening on our screen. These are people's parents.
Hey, I can see that's a good boxer. 17 incidents, and some of the opposition MPs were banned. According to our standing rule, if you cause violence and the speaker identifies you, you can be punished by being suspended from the House like 1 month, 2 months without pay, and you cannot even step within the vicinity of the parliament. So I'm sure by next week, the speaker will take action against those MPs who cause violence. And it's not a new thing in Kenyan politics. It happens after every general election. So we expected this, and we'll see what will happen, but I'm sure he'll take action. 2 or 3 MPs, I'm very sure will face disciplinary action from the speaker.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so Richard, the 13th Parliament will work with an additional 10 committees to discharge parliamentary work according to changes in the revised standing orders. Now, how is the membership of these committees determined, and is it along party lines?
I didn't get you clearly, but I think you're asking about the formation of House committees.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, from next week now, we'll have the formation of the House committees, so that because there's a pending vetting of the nominees to the cabinet. That's the first crucial task that is awaiting in Parliament. So the Parliament must form the committees, starting with the vetting committee that will vet the 21 nominees nominated by the President. And according to the House rules, the Speaker of the National Assembly, now the most rectangular, will be the chair of that vetting committee. And from next week, we'll see its formation, and the nominees will be invited to Parliament for vetting before the public, and all the questions will be made in front of cameras. So it will be an interesting scenario, because some of the opposition MPs have said that they will reject some of the names because of integrity issues. But the Kenya Kwanza side has said that all the nominees must pass without struggle. So it's an interesting thing that we are waiting to see.
Now, Richard, President William Ruto is currently on an East Africa tour. Just yesterday, he was in Addis Ababa for the launch of Safaricom Ethiopia. He's visiting Tanzania and another country in the East African region. How important are these visits for Kenya's relationship with its neighbors, and what does he aim to gain from these visits? Because, I mean, he's been in office for less than 50 days. He's been to New York. He went for the Queen's burial, and is just traveling. Are there benefits from all these travels? Your jet-setting President William Ruto.
The foreign visits are very important because, Kenya plays a very big role in the Horn of Africa in terms of bringing peace and helping the warring parties to negotiate. Even today, President William Ruto met an American representative, the Horn of Africa. They were trying to talk about peace in the Horn of Africa, especially Somalia and Ethiopia. So even tomorrow, there's a peace meeting in South Africa. And interestingly, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was appointed the envoy of Horn of Africa peace by William Ruto, said I won't attend because he'll be engaged in other duties. So Kenya plays a very big role in terms of bringing peace in the Horn of Africa. And President William Ruto must visit those countries. In fact, President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda has invited William Ruto to Uganda on Sunday during the Independence Day in Uganda on Sunday. So William Ruto will be invited to attend the event. And this comes the backdrop of those controversial tweets by Museveni's son, General Muhazi, who said that he will only need 2 weeks to invade Nairobi. So it's a very interesting scenario. We are waiting to see what will happen on Sunday, because Kenya and Uganda are very good neighboring countries, and the incident was also a very big diplomatic shift. But
I'm going to pick up from that where you left it now. Muhoozi Kainerugaba, that's Uganda's president's son. Now, you mentioned the statement he said that in 2 weeks he could invade Nairobi, Kenya. I mean, how is Nairobi reacting to that statement, even though the president apologized on behalf of his son?
There was no official communication from the Kenyan government about the controversial tweets, but you remember the current nominated cabinet secretary of foreign affairs, who has not yet been approved or appointed, met with the Ugandan ambassador to Kenya, and they talked, but there was no official statement from Kenya. And after Museveni's tweet apology to yesterday, we saw that things cooled down, and we're expecting when President Museveni meets with Ruto on Sunday in Uganda, the issue will be resolved, and the diplomatic tiff will end. And Museveni took a very major move by demoting his son, by removing from the land forces. So Kenyans are happy, and I think the issue is now over.
Now, finally, I just want to take you back to the screening it's going to be televised and will happen in Parliament next week. Kenyan President William Ruto recently unveiled a 22-member cabinet that he will entrust to deliver on his pre-election privileges. Do you expect the vetting and screening of these nominees to be a smooth process following the events that happened in Parliament yesterday? Because there are Azimio lawmakers that will be saying, you know, we're going to get back at you at the screening. And your screening will not just be a walk in the park, will make life difficult for you, as you said earlier. So how do we expect this screening to go? And talking about the integrity test, how many of this cabinet members are facing, you know, corruption allegation and court cases?
I think in Parliament we're expecting the new side to be tough on those who are facing integrity issues, but I'm sure William Ruto and his side will manage to see the names approved in Parliament. Even the committee, which is led by most of the time, the vetting committee, I think will approve all the names nominated by the president. And at least 4 or 5 nominees are facing integrity issues. But you remember the cabinet nominee for agriculture, who was facing rape allegations, Mr. Mithika Linturi, has already been cleared from the allegations after the complainant dropped the case. Another nominee called Aisha Jumwa, nominated for gender and public service, was also facing corruption charges. And the second allegation is questioning of academic qualifications, but that case has already been dropped because the complainant withdrew the case. So we are expecting a very interesting scenario next week, because some of the allegations will be dropped in Parliament, in the court, by the complainant.
Thank you very much, Richard Basire. Join us live from Nairobi, Kenya, for your time and analysis. We do look forward to catching up soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. But sorry for the poor audio.
That's fine.
No problem.
Have a nice weekend.